I'd like to call to order the December meeting of the Board of Early Education and Care. Today, we will begin a conversation regarding rate reimbursement reforms and rate setting. We'll hear from the EEC team on the tremendous amount of work done to take into consideration our movement towards a cost-informed structure while maintaining the benchmarks of the Federal Market Rate Survey. And this conversation will lead into a board vote on rates in January. We look forward to the education to the board from the team on all the work that you've done. And I'll turn it over to the Secretary for opening comments. Mr. Secretary.
Odd as it might sound, I'm going to cede my time in light of the important conversation that we're going to have during the meeting. So it's great to be in community with you all and look forward to the conversation.
Great. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I will be brief too, because I am also excited to get to the conversation, which I think all of us have been waiting for a very long time. But a few updates. Many of you are aware that the closeout supplemental budget was passed, significantly including funding for some of the work around the emergency assistance shelter, the families that are in emergency assistance shelter. But for EEC, also of significance was the inclusion of a statutory change related to the price limitation rule. As we've talked about before, that's a state law that requires a private vendor, like a child care program, to charge the same rate to the state that they would charge to a private pay person. And this is a rule that makes sense in a functioning market, which child care is not. And therefore, we have operated for several years under a waiver from the Operational Services Division to exclude the child care market from that rule. We felt this is a really essential exclusion in order to ensure affordability for families, especially for programs that are offering discounts to staff or to families who aren't able or don't qualify to participate in the child care financial assistance system. And so we were very pleased to see, after many years of advocacy and support now by the Healy Driscoll administration, language included in that closeout SUP that permanently in statute excludes the child care market from the price limitation rule, which is a very important piece of maintaining affordability and relates to our ability to increase rates without having that necessarily passed on to the private pay parents that are served in programs. So it relates very much to the conversation today and to the agency and many people's work over the years. So another quick update on our work related to the families that are in EA shelter. As most of you are aware, there are more than 5,000 families with very young children living in those shelters, and we've been working very closely across secretariats with the Housing Secretariat, Health and Human Services, and through the Command Center and the Executive Office to try and support young families in various different ways. Including working with our early education and care programs. But I want to just call out one particular partnership. We've been working with Cradles to Crowns and Neighborhood Villages and Horizons for Homeless Children to create basically a durable goods initiative that with the winter weather coming on, we wanted to make sure that there were coats, hats, scarves, gloves, mittens, essential winter gear, and also essential learning and play gear, which we know is a basic need for kids to be able to play. So in partnership with with those organizations and with support from generous philanthropic organizations, we are now deploying as we speak, coats, hats, scarves, gloves, and some of those learning materials are also going to be going out to all the families who are in shelter and also those who are coming through the Welcome Center. So I want to thank our partners for their work on that. I think we will be probably looking at a second round in the spring when we know there'll be additional essential needs. So just grateful for the community that's come together to support those families in shelter. And I know many of you are at the community level also supporting families in shelter. Quick update on teacher certification. As the board is aware, we paused during COVID our teacher certification process. It's a really important piece of the work the agency does to certify our teachers and recognize with a credential their work, especially as they move along sort of a pathway. But that system was quite backed up and complicated, and so as we have come out of the pandemic, we've been slowly turning it back on in a new way. We opened up director certification first in the western part of the state, and then we rolled that out statewide. We've maintained it as optional at this point while we continue our work on credentialing, but for directors, who want to be able to receive a certification from EEC that's now available statewide. We've also just opened it up optionally for teachers and lead teachers in Western Mass, continuing our path of phased in rollout. So we're going to be tracking the volume there and hope to open up to the rest of the state too. Again, we'll maintain that as optional at this point, where programs themselves and directors maintain the ability to also certify their teachers, which has been an important flexibility in the current workforce crisis. So we will continue to work with programs, but also very happy to be offering that certification for directors, teachers, and lead teachers who choose to go through that process. My last update is just to say that we anticipate the next board meeting being outside of Boston, west of 495, so either in central or western Mass. So hoping everyone can just plan for that. And that concludes my updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. At this time, I'd like to move to the public comment portion of the meeting and do want to acknowledge that the board has received a number of public comments via email prior to the event that's been distributed to everybody. And at this time, I'd like to thank those who are here today to provide public comment and invite Cheryl Eitri up first. Cheryl, welcome.
Little nervous.
Don't be. We're easy.
Thank you for the introduction.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Eitri. I'm the Director of Early Education and Care at the South Boston Neighborhood House and also the Family Engagement Coordinator for our CFACE grant. The Boston Family Engagement Network bridges the gap for thousands of children not connected to formal early education and care programs in many ways. The family engagements across the state of Massachusetts, Coordinated Family and Community Engagement Grant has been level funded for the past 10 years. In Boston, we serve over 10,000 families a year in a wide variety of services, and there's many more families served throughout the state of Massachusetts. As we prepare for this year, we respectfully ask for a 10% increase in the EEC line item 3,000-750 in the fiscal year 25 state budget for the Coordinated Families and Community Engagement Grant. That's it.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for your leadership and advocacy on behalf of all the children and families that you serve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Eddy from MADCA. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Secretary, Madam Commissioner, members of the board. Thank you for having me. My name is William Eddy. I'm the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Association of Early Education and Care, sometimes referred to as MADCA. We represent providers across the state from Pittsfield to South Boston, who collectively provide the majority of subsidy care that is purchased by the Department for Children of Low Income and At-Risk Children. Today, I'm here to offer our support and appreciation for the three-rate plan put forth by the department today. Early education rates are the lifeblood of subsidy programs. Frankly, you'll hear from providers today who are going to talk to you about what it means to their staff, what the rate means to their children and families. The rate is not only what you pass today, but it then annualizes into the per-child rate that we providers are paid each and every day for children that receive subsidies from the department. And so, to us, while there are tremendous programs also that are offered by this department, including the C3 grant, for subsidy programs, the C3 grant represents an awesome supplemental income to do quality programming. But the subsidy rate stands alone in keeping programs open. 80 cents on every dollar goes to pay our staff. The remainder keep the lights on, keep us operating. And so what you do today means so much to our programs. Setting rates and doing rate plans are a complex operation and hard to get right. Look at, the department has operated with the federal government setting market rate standards. Market rate standards, while well-intentioned, has had tremendous negative impact in terms of creating a huge differential between regional rates. We, concurrently, trying to get around market rate, have offered each year an across-the-board approach working with our friends in the legislature. And frankly, we've done exactly the same thing. We've crafted an unintended consequence of even making the rates further apart when you look from Western Mass to Boston. And so today, we offer support for what is a complex plan. A plan that attempts to do three things. A plan that attempts to thread the needle and give an across-the-board increase to all providers who desperately need it. It attempts for the first time in this department's history to do regional rate equity, which is so badly needed in Western Mass and Southeastern Mass. And finally, it attempts to consolidate regions. Frankly, we've just had too many regions. And the simplicity and the efficiency of going down to 3 regions is something the provider community welcomes. Is this rate plan, is it absolutely 100% on spot? Is it perfect? No, no rate plan is perfect. And so are there places that we will offer, Region 3 preschool being one, we'll offer asking the department to take a good look at whether that looks like it fits in where Region 3 should normally fit. But it is a absolutely well-done plan, which we appreciate with the commissioner and her team. But let's be clear, this is a transition in rates. We join you in looking to get to cost-based rates that more accurately reflect the 18% differential across the state. This plan makes tremendous progress. Does it fix the issue of, differential rates and the gap between regions? No, it does not, but it makes progress, and it's something this board should be proud of. And so today, we offer our support of the plan and ask you to approve it in January with, if you can make it even better, awesome. But we look forward to working with you as you move it and hopefully get it out to providers by February. I thank you very much for the opportunity to see you today.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for your advocacy. Appreciate it. Next, I'd like to invite Sharon McDonald up.
So many microphones, so little time. Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. As some of you know, I am the president and CEO of the Guild of St. Agnes in Worcester, the largest subsidized childcare program in central Massachusetts and one of the largest in the state. We serve 1,700 children in 18 child care centers, and we have a family child care system at the 135 family child care homes. 95% of our children receive financial assistance, and 600 of those children are in supportive child care, either through DCF or homeless. Before I talk about what the rates, which is what I'm here for today, I first want to acknowledge and appreciate the work that the commissioner and her staff have done around financial assistance. Anyone who's been around knows that for years and years and years, I've been banging the drum with several other providers about how to make financial assistance more approachable, more acceptable, and more fair, and most of all, more respectful. And the work that's been done is just overwhelmingly positive. I've been meeting with all of our center directors who keep saying, what's going on with EEC? They've completely changed. So they're like, they're really family friendly now. And I said, yes, they are. And we appreciate that. So I want to honor and acknowledge that. The Guild was really honored to host, I think, all of you at the EC staff retreat this past year in August at our University Collaborative Center. Little updates. Our partner in the center, Worcester State, just finished their first class. They did a curriculum class there, and they had about 18 students. They loved being in and out of the classrooms. Next semester, they're planning on doing 2 classes there, and it's just been positive all the way around. I'm happy to report that the classroom you all met in is now filled with 18 preschool children, so that's good. And we are about to open one of the other infant rooms, the purple room, where you did some work afterwards. So that'll be 7 of the 10 classrooms that are open. Unfortunately, the other 3 that are closed are preschool rooms, so that there's room for 60 children there. We were hoping to be able to open at least one more, because we had 3 lead teachers ready to go. And then Worcester, the city of Worcester had a new contract with their teachers. And they have this brilliant idea to pay, to give our staff with experience half of the year's credit. So for staff that worked for us for 20 years, they got 10 years credit in the Worcester Public School system. So we were very happy to be paying our lead teachers $54,000 a year with 6 weeks vacation, who had 15 to 20 years. And they left us to get $80,000 to $87,000 in the public schools. So I'm thrilled for them. I'm really sad for us. And I know that this is an age-old battle that is continue. But over the past couple years, with the significant rate increases that we've received, we felt like we were finally gaining some traction. And over the past 2 years, we have been working to substantially raise the salaries of all our staff. Last year, we were able to give a significant salary increase and raised salaries across the board between a low of 5% to a high of 19%, really trying to adjust. For 2 years before that, we were working on lead teachers to try to keep them. Then we were trying to adjust the teacher salaries, the assistant teacher salaries, and the 70 drivers and monitors that we have driving our 55 vehicles. It cost us $1.2 million last year. About $900,000 came from the rates. We were hoping to continue that trend this year. Unfortunately, really happy for the guys in Region 1 and Region 5, but Region 2 was the top of that combined rate as being proposed in this rate increase. And so we are looking at probably about a 6% rate increase across, when you consider infants, toddlers, and the preschools based on a 3-tiered rate. Who knows where it's going to be? But because a third of our staff either work in transportation or work in family child care coordinator roles or administration, that really equals to about a regular cost of living, about a 3% increase this year across the board. The good news is we closed our infant programs several years ago because the rate was so low. We've gradually been opening up infant rooms. The one at University Collaborative is one. We opened one in our Webster Center. And if the rates do come out as high as they are, our intention, we still have 4 classrooms ready to go that have been serving other children. So our intention is to open more infant rooms. But because the bulk of our children are either preschool or school age, it really isn't going to affect our cost of living or our salary increase for this year. But I applaud the work that's been done. I applaud, as Bill said, the combination of the regions, and I look forward to working with you to continue to improve the rate structure moving forward.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'd like to invite Steve Huntley up.
I'll just go. I'm Steve Huntley, Executive Director of Valley Opportunity Council. We're a community action agency out in Holyoke and Chicopee. We provide a variety of services touching about 80,000 people a year. 1,100 of those are through our child care programs, early education and care programs. I'm here to thank this group. A year ago, I came and I threw a mini tantrum about the plan. You folks, the commissioners, you folks, looked a little harder and found us a few more dollars for last year and made the commitment that regional equity would be a priority going forward. And I'm here to thank you for making that regional equity a priority for us going forward. Obviously, we're in Region 1, the big, I'll say a winner in this plan. So we appreciate you guys doing that. I also want to thank the commissioner and her team for some of the, I had to write it down, financial assistance rules. I'm still learning. Old dog, new tricks.
Language matters.
In particular with how we were able to enroll homeless families. So one of our programs we have is working with many migrants. I don't publicly share the number. I won't publicly share the number. But back in the early part of October, we received 43 work permits. And we were quickly able to enroll 27 of them into our own programs as a direct result of the new financial assistance regulations. So it is really, you spoke of the EA situation. We have migrants working. We have their kids in care. They're getting transported every day, and it's a beautiful thing. And so thank you for that. And just, I guess I didn't say it out loud. I will say it out loud. The 3-tier plan is the plan we're really happy with. The artificial barriers are lifted between, 413, outside 413. Our rates you can see some of them are half of what Metro Boston, and so we appreciate the movement towards getting us closer. I believe the study said our rates should be somewhere around 20% less based on the cost of providing services when they were much more than that. So I appreciate the leadership and everybody moving forward to try and march us towards that. It's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Next, I'll call up Crystal Galvin.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
So good afternoon. Thank you again for having me today, Chair, board members, Commissioner Kershaw. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today about the Coordinated Family and Community Engagement Grant Program. In my current role at the John F. Kennedy Family Service Center in Charlestown, I direct the center's family engagement programs. We're the only organization in town providing free, quality, and inclusive early learning opportunities in a gentrified community with a high concentration of child poverty. I want to acknowledge the incredible work that's happening on behalf of the Commissioner and within the department to make efforts to improve the state child care system. Yet for many families, the pathway to engagement begins with CFCE-funded programs, such as ASQ Screens, an array of playgroups offering early literacy, school readiness, and social emotional learning opportunities. For nearly a decade, the needs of our families have changed dramatically, while funding to sustain these critical family supports has not. CFCE programs are a gateway for a better life for many. The Boston Family Engagement Network is funded by the CFCE grant program, and our funding has been level funded for the past 10 years and serving 10,000 families a year. I respectfully ask for a 10% increase in the EEC line item 3000-7050 in the FY25 state budget. This will allow for exponential growth for minimal financial investment. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Crystal. Thanks for being here. And last, I have Grace Richardson. Grace, welcome.
Hello, good morning, Commissioner Kershaw. How are you? Good morning, EC Board. My name is Grace Richardson, and I'm the Executive Director of the American Family Child Care Association. We are an association of family child care providers. Since 2001, we promote, advocate, and provide direct services to family child care. And I'm here today, and thank you for sending out that RFI for family child care to include them in facilities improvement. And I just want to say that this is not the first time the Office for Child Care Services did include family child care for facilities improvement grants years ago. And I'm here to urge the board to set aside funding so that family child care providers can improve their spaces. It is a really desired need. A lot of providers are spending anywhere from $40,000 to $50,000 converting basements into spaces for child care. And we also know that family child care are licensed to do child care out of their homes. And we also know that they try to adapt those homes for child care. They weren't built for child care, a lot of them. I would also like to advocate for funding for assistance so that we can sustain many of the family child care providers who've been doing family child care for years. Family child care providers are dealing with children who have behavior needs, special needs. Unlike other types of settings, there are not extra staff to handle children with special needs. And so family child care serve multi-age children while caring for special needs, including there are children in there who are blind, there are children who have really deep behavior issues. And I would also like to thank you for, once again, for requests for information. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Is there anyone else here in the room that's here for public comment? Great, thank you. I just want to express my gratitude to those that are in the room and those that submitted testimony in advance of the meeting. I think one of the reasons why there's a lot of gratitude coming towards the department is because of the partnership with folks in the field right now as we live in this kind of how do we do it better, and challenge ourselves every single day on behalf of children and families. And so for those that advocated today on a particular issue, just want to express our gratitude back to you for being here and adding your voice, because it only strengthens the work that we're doing. So thank you. And with that, I'd like to move to routine business. We have before us the minutes of the November 8th, 2023 board meeting. Are there any additions, corrections, or edits? Hearing none, I'd make a motion to approve the minutes of the November 8th, 2023 board meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Abstain. I wasn't
Abstain,
there.
Carolyn. Maura, abstain?
Yeah,
Yes, great.
abstain.
Thank you. The minutes of the November 8th, 2023 board meeting are approved. I have one additional item of routine business. I want to acknowledge receipt of written disclosure from Vice Chair Moeller pursuant to Mass General Law Statute Chapter 15D, which will be reflected in the next minutes. And with that, I will turn it over to the commissioner.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to invite Amy Checkaway, Leah Jack, and Adrian Murphy to come up, who will be presenting. And as they are coming up, I just want to say a couple things about the presentation you're about to hear, which we have shared with the board members. We posted it online yesterday, and you heard much public testimony about it as well today. We have been on a journey to this day, and I'm pretty excited that we're here today to be able to present. And I want to start by just acknowledging the tremendous work by the team at EEC. Thoughtful, smart, comprehensive, evidence-based, really thoughtful in terms of thinking about what we're trying to accomplish. And we know we're on a long journey to where we want to go. But the presentation that we'll be making to you today really builds on years of hoping that we could find a different way to set rates and bring greater equity and access both for families and for providers across the Commonwealth, and to move away from a market or price-based system and to really think about the cost of care. And we're taking that step very significantly. And with the support of the Haley Driscoll administration and the legislature, we have sort of a unique opportunity this year. We have our cost data for the very first time in a comprehensive report, and we have $65 million in funding to be able to put those two things together into what is a foundational plan and a step towards the direction that we'd like to go in. It is not perfect plan, but I think the three options that we'll be presenting for the board's consideration today, all of which will move us forward. We will be recommending one of those options specifically for the board's consideration that we think does balance what we're trying to do in this year with this opportunity, which is move towards a cost-informed, simplify the rate structure, bring greater equity geographically, and make sure that we recognize that everyone across the state needs an adjustment in their rates. This was a complicated task, and it involved multiple factors that we were trying to address, and multiple constructs and restrictions in terms of funding and line item language and meeting federal requirements, but also wanting to make sure we were addressing the needs of the field. And again, proud of the work that has been done, and looking forward very much to the discussion. So with that, I'll turn it over to Amy.
Thank you, Commissioner. Amy Checkaway. I'm very happy to be here today, and I think before we start, just really want to reflect that this work, I will be doing a lot of talking today along with Leah, is reflective of a much larger team who met regularly, gave a lot of input across the agency, and also want to acknowledge just a smaller core team who was particularly involved in a lot of the complicated modeling and sort of continuous process of developing options that we're going to be presenting today. My colleague Leah Jack, who I think, I'm not sure the board has met yet, who is a project manager and did an enormous amount of work modeling different options and really getting deep into all of the details. Adrian Murphy, our Director of Data Analytics, who helps support the work as well. Ian Cutler, who is behind us, whose brainpower was very appreciated, and Krista Lanton as well, our Budget Director. Again, this represents a much larger team. So with that, as we already heard in public comment today, we know that childcare financial assistance rates are so important to our system. For families, our rates really subsidize the cost of childcare and provide families with access to programs that they would not otherwise likely have been able to afford. And we know that for programs that serve families participating in the child care financial assistance system, our rates really impact program revenue and financial stability and the extent to which they are able to invest in staff and quality investments. So as the commissioner said, over the past 18 months and beyond, we really have been on a journey that focuses on reshaping our child care financial assistance system. And today we're talking more specifically about our rates, which has really involved two strands of work in the past 18 months. And I know we have been talking about this throughout, but I'm going to do sort of a brief recap just to ground us all. So first, we have really continued to do something that federal policy has required since the late 1980s, which is collecting and using information about childcare prices, the market rate that is being charged to families. And as was already mentioned, that's really with the rationale that associating childcare financial assistance rates with prices will support parent choice and access. So as you know, we did this through commissioning our latest market rate survey in 2022, last year, and the board used the findings to help inform adjustments to our rates last fall. Second, we have been focused much more intensively on something new to Massachusetts, which is really to analyze data and model costs. So by costs, we mean sort of really the value of resources that it takes to provide childcare services. In other words, to operate a program. And again, that's really to understand the extent to which both our financial assistance rates as well as our market rates enable programs to cover the cost of care. So I'm going to first just recap more quickly than we did last month some of the key steps in this journey. And today we're going to spend most of the time obviously reviewing with the board several options that we have developed for increasing childcare financial assistance rates this year, and really what we see as transforming the rate structure to address inequities and try to start to simplify and align our rates. So we thought that it would be helpful always just to start us in this conversation with our current rates, but again, just taking a step back before we take a look at this. As you know, last fall, the board approved and EC implemented a historic $80 million rate increase, which included both across the board increases for all regions, ages, and program types, and also targeted increases to ensure that our rates were at a certain percentile of the market rate. As you know, last year's targeted increase really was informed by the market rate survey, which found that most of our state rates were below the 50th percentile of the market rate. And in many cases at that time were below the 25th percentile. So this table that you see here shows EEC's current daily rates after last year's increase by region, by age group, and by provider type. As you know, EEC pays a per child per day rate that's based on program type, based on age, based on region, and type of care provided. You can see, and I know we also looked at this last month, how many different rates we currently have, and there's actually more. And the variation in rates.
Simple,
exactly.
simple version, yeah.
It's the core version just for us to focus today. You also see the variation in rates across age groups and regions. So on this chart, you can also see the percentile of the market rate, which is below each dollar rate in parentheses. And this green shading indicates that, again, right now, in terms of our rates that are currently at or above the 50th percentile, currently half of them meet that threshold. So we're particularly interested, as we talked about last month, we're sort of focused on the 50th percentile because we are still operating under a market rate methodology for now. And last spring, the Federal Office of Child Care made clear that for states that are still using market rate surveys, the expectation is for states to progress as quickly as possible towards this percentile. Although a number of our rates are still below the 50th percentile, the rate increases last year actually allowed us to make significant progress. So last year, only 7 of the 28 center-based rates, just as an example, were below the 50th, or were above the 50th percentile prior to that rate increase. So the methodology, as we have been talking about, that states use to set rates really is a critical decision point. There is increased recognition nationally, as well as in Massachusetts, that a market rate survey is not necessarily the best way to determine childcare financial assistance rates. As we've been talking about, the prices that programs charge to families, although important information, usually is very related to the local market, including how much families can afford to pay for care. So therefore, geographic areas with lower income families can get less reimbursement from the state, which really impacts families' ability to access care and can also impact the financial stability of programs that serve those children. So as you know, in recognition of the value of using data to beyond market prices to inform rates, the board directed EEC last fall to first work with the federal government to pursue an alternative methodology based on costs for informing reimbursement rates, with the goal of using this methodology as part of our next state plan for the federal government. That will go into place in the fall of 2024. The board also requested that we use data from both the market rate survey and our ongoing cost research to further assess the regional rate structure and come back to the board with recommendations this year. So as an update, and again to review from last month, this fall EEC did submit a proposal to the federal government to move forward with an alternative methodology using the cost of care, and we are in the final stages of the approval process. 2 other states and the District of Columbia have been approved by the Administration for Children and Families to date, and we hope to be one of the next on the list. Our external cost research team, the Center for Early Learning Funding Equity, also finished and published their comprehensive cost modeling study this summer. And that work has really directly informed the approach and the specific options that are before you today. We are very well positioned since we have done this initial cost work, again, to move forward with the next stage of work, which will involve the more formal methodology. And so these models have really, again, been enormously impactful so far, but we recognize they are not set in stone and will continue to evolve as we gather new data and additional input from the field. So this slide shows just a few key findings from the cost study, which you will really hopefully see come through in the options that we're proposing for rate increases today. I will point in particular to the second bullet on here, which is that, as has already been referenced, the cost research team found that although the cost to operate a program varied across regions, that cost does not vary nearly as widely as our current reimbursement rates. Another important finding that we have integrated into all of our options is that some regions do have very similar costs to one another, although their rates in some cases are very different. So we'll talk in more detail about both of those things in a few minutes. Again, just to ground us in some of the key recommendations from the cost study for consideration for the rate structure. Again, the cost research really emphasized that although economic diversity exists and should inform reimbursement rates, the cost research and data does not necessarily support having as many different rates as we currently do. It also, again, revealed that there are some regions especially close in cost to one another and also similar in terms of other key economic indicators. So therefore, there's really justification to simplify the rate structure by consolidating and reducing the number of different rates. We have used sort of a heavy focus that was also sort of put forward in the cost research, again, to really focus on equity and trying to improve equity by age, region, and type of care, with particular focus this fall on trying to address some longstanding geographic inequities in the state. So we have been doing a lot of work over the past months on an approach and strategy for our rate increases and rate structure reforms for this fiscal year, and have 4 main goals, which we have been reaching towards and balancing as we develop our specific proposals. First of all, really recognizing that all programs are facing increasing operational costs. And you'll see in each option, this is addressed through using a portion of the funds to make sure there are rate increases across the board, again, really reflecting to the extent that we can a cost of living adjustment through all rates. Second, again, is using the extensive data and models that we have, what we have learned from the cost research to try to simplify the rate structure and address geographic inequities. So the options we are putting forward today include consolidation of rates for regions that have similar costs and tracking progress towards rates covering the cost of care. We are continuing to track and make sure that we are progressing towards our rates, also meeting the 50th percentile of the market rate. And so we have been also measuring that progress and taking that into account as we have developed the options. And finally, in recognition of the importance of resources and hearing from all programs how important resources are for them to be able to invest in quality, we are integrating quality funding that is currently functioning as an add-on into the base rate moving forward for all the programs that it applies to. And we can talk more about these things as we get into some of the details.
I just wanted to mention that part of our reason for attending to the market rate is that until the alternative methodology has been approved and implemented, we still will be held accountable by our federal oversight agency for progress towards that 50th percentile. So they have been very supportive of our move towards an alternative methodology and have been supportive of our efforts and progress. So we aren't expecting sort of to have necessarily a finding or an adverse impact, but they will expect us to be able to demonstrate progress, continued progress, until that alternative methodology is fully implemented.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Which shows the complexity of the challenge
Yes.
this year, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Right, because sometimes these things are working
Yeah.
against each
Another
other.
layer.
Right.
So finally, in terms of background, just wanted to point to some considerations that are, I think, important to understand in terms of when we're talking about consolidating rates. So first of all, even more specifically, just want to point out that our cost research found that the western, central, and southeastern regions of our state, and separately, Metro Boston and Boston regions, have very similar costs, again, which we've been incorporating into our options. The options we have developed do, again, propose consolidating rates based on the cost research, but to varying extents. Making this kind of adjustment does require, in some cases, substantial resources. So the more we consolidate rates, the less resources remain this year for across the board increases and or further increases targeted on costs. So again, this is a bit of a balancing act. And I think the opportunity to consolidate feels particularly impactful to the extent that we can achieve that this year, as it really allows us to address longstanding inequities, but we recognize that resources are required to do so. It's also important to note that, and this may sound a bit like a technicality, but the across-the-board increases in consolidation, sort of parts of our process, simultaneously do in many cases help us to make progress towards our market rate goals and the cost of care. So again, we're continuing to really track and understand that. So it's not all of these different pieces are really linked together. So, do you want to turn to
Step
you?
in here, yeah.
Yes.
So this year's final budget included kind of unusually 3 separate line items for childcare financial assistance rate increases. There were 2 that restricted the funding only to center-based programs, and one that 1041, which allowed unrestricted, so both for family childcare and for center-based. So I raised this because it was a further factor in how we could apply the rate increases and which funding could be used for which types of care. So the team also had to take into consideration as they were considering the various options and understanding the cost implications, how much we had for each type of care and be able to hit those targets as much as possible.
So I'm going to turn it to Leah to talk through really the sequence of the calculations that we used in our approaches, just to make sure that that is clear.
Yes, and we took a standard approach to any calculations that we did for the 3 scenarios that we're presenting today, starting with the FY23 base rate and then adding the quality add-on, and then on top of that, incorporating the QRAS. Then we applied an across-the-board cost of living adjustment, which ranged from 3.7% to 7%. And then we consolidated across regions with economic similarities, mainly driving cost. If we had any available or additional room left in the budget, we then looked at targeted increases focused on cost. So I'll hand it back over to Amy now.
Okay, so we are now going to present 3 different options that are informed by all of the data that we have and that attempt to align with all of the goals that I shared earlier. So you will see that each includes a cost of living adjustment, consolidation of regions to really simplify the rate structure and address inequities. And as I said before, and as Leah will detail, each also includes and tracks progress towards both our market rate percentiles and our rates, the extent to which our rates are covering the cost of care. Here is an overview of the 3 options. And Commissioner, I will maybe turn it to you for some of the overview, and then we can take on walking through all the details.
That's
Yes.
a good idea. Go ahead. So as the team said, we approached it by looking at 3 separate options. So a 2-rate option, which would create the greatest consolidation. So basically 2 rates across the state. Where Metro Boston and Boston would remain as a single rate and the rest of the state would be a separate rate. The 3-rate option, which consolidates our western, central, and southeast regions, which have very similar costs and economic indicators, Metro Boston and Boston together, and then leaves Region 3, which is the northeast part of the state, which really falls between those 2 other groupings as its own separate region. And then the 4-rate option. And again, which would maintain Metro Boston and Boston as separate as well. As the team said, we were balancing how much you could do in an across the board, and you can see this very well laid out here. The more consolidation, the less there is to go across the board. The less consolidation, there's more to go across the board. So we are recommending the 3-rate option. We feel like that does the most in terms of being informed by the cost study, brings simplicity, and still maintains an opportunity for us to ensure everyone across the state gets a level of increase. And it also allowed for some targeted increases, so some funding left over in order to make some progress towards cost. To closing the gap with the cost of care. And I will say the team very intentionally also focused on infant care in particular. So that's something that has been a feature that we looked very carefully at the yawning gap between the cost of infant care and the current reimbursement rates for infant care. We have childcare affordability is a challenge across the age groups and for every family that is accessing childcare. But we have a particular challenge and lack of supply in infant toddler. And you heard this in some of the public testimony. Many of our programs have chosen either to go out of the infant and toddler care business altogether or to switch how they deliver those services. So it was definitely an emphasis and focus for the group. But we are going to be recommending that the board consider supporting our 3-rate option. And we're going to probably focus mostly on that option for you all today, but the details in here about what the considerations for the other options are there for your consideration as well.
Great. So Leah is now going to briefly just describe each of the options and walk through the variables and considerations at a high level that we kept in mind for each of these.
Me and Commissioner. So I will be starting with the 2-rate option, and that option applies a 3.7% COLA across the board. As the Commissioner mentioned, it consolidates Metro and Metro Boston rates, and then separately consolidates Western, Central, Northeast, and Southeast rates. And there's no additional targeted increase beyond that. Some things that we noticed when applying these changes were that 86% of rates would move to at or above the 50th percentile of market rate. 44% of rates would be at or above the full cost of care. And when we say full cost of care, we're talking about how our rates relate to the full cost of care. So say we have a rate that currently is at $50, but the full cost of care is $100. We would say that that rate is at 50% cost of care. And so we're tracking, as both Amy's mentioned, progress towards full cost of care as well as progress towards 50th percentile here. We also noticed that our lowest percentage of cost of care moves from 56% to 73%, so a big increase. And we're looking forward to more of that in years to come, but for now, these are pretty exciting changes. This option is estimated to cost $64.8 million.
I will also just note that for the purpose of this year, we're using the cost of care as included in the cost study that we just did, and it is assuming current compensation levels. So just want to acknowledge that that's how we're defining it for this conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So this next slide highlights our progress towards the 50th percentile of market rate, but at an actual rate level. So in this table, you can see on the left-hand side the various regions that we have across the state. And then across the top, we've listed out our age groups. So it's a matrix representing 36 of our multitude of rates that we offer to child care providers who support children in need of financial assistance. For the 2-rate option in particular, we are highlighting the 5 rates that are not at the 50th percentile of market rate. They still have a little bit of progress to make, but you can also see from the white boxes that there are a number of rates that were at or above the 50th percentile prior to the work that we did regarding rates. And then the green boxes represent the progress that was made towards the 50th percentile. So those green boxes represent rates that weren't at the 50th percentile, but now are at or above the 50th percentile. So next is the 3-rate option, which is the recommended option. In this option, we would apply a 5.5% COLA across the board. We would consolidate Metro and Metro Boston rates. Separately, we would consolidate Western, Central, and Southeast rates, and then the Northeast would remain separate. We are also able to apply a targeted increase of reaching 81% of costs for center-based care providers. And the considerations, some of the things that we noticed when we applied these changes were that 89% of rates would meet or exceed the 50th percentile of market rate. 44% of rates would be at or above the full cost of care. And our lowest cost of care percentages move from 56% to 72%. This option is estimated to cost $65 million. This is the same chart as before, but with different data reflecting the changes for the 3-rate option. Here, the thing of note is that there are 4 rates now that aren't meeting the 50th percentile, whereas in the prior slide it was 5. So this rate option makes some good progress towards the 50th percentile across a number of our rates. Finally, the 4-rate option would apply a 7% COLA across the board and would consolidate Western, Central, and Southeast, while all of the other regions would remain separate. There are no other targeted increases beyond this. And some of the things that we noticed when applying these changes were that 83% of rates are now at or above the 50th percentile, with 42% of rates being at or above the full cost of care. And then our lowest cost of care percentage moves from 56% to 66%. And this option is estimated to cost $64.5 million. So all of the options are well within the budget of $65 million. And so we're hoping we gave you guys some good information to mull over. This is the last chart regarding progress towards the 50th percentile. And in the 4-rate option, there are 6 rates that aren't meeting or exceeding the 50th percentile. So now I'll hand it over to Amy.
So a bit of additional information for consideration, and then look forward to a discussion and questions and all of that. So we have developed a comparable proposal for family childcare rates in terms of the approach to consolidation, the cost of living adjustment, and targeted increases based on the cost of care if possible. All of the rates are subject to negotiation with the SEIU, Local 509, but the hope is to move forward with, again, sort of a comparable, consistent proposal for the entire system.
Yeah, I'll just jump in for a second. So as the board may be aware, family child care providers that participate in the child care financial assistance are represented by SEIU Local 509. So rate increases are both subject to board action, legislative and line item language, and in the case of family child care, to bargaining with the union representing our family child care providers, adding a further. So all the data that you've seen presented today is exclusively on the center-based system while we continue our negotiations with 509. But it is our intention to take a system-wide approach so that we wouldn't be proposing a separate way of approaching our family child care rate increases as we would from our center base. So all of the consolidations and the increases and the targeted and the attention to the different age groups will follow our proposal to the union, subject to their our negotiation and their approval, will follow exactly the approach we've taken, and we will be recommending to them and proposing that 3-rate option. And we have a formal negotiation scheduled with them for December 18th, so we'll have information from them prior to the next board meeting when you'll consider your vote on this approach.
Great. So we couldn't resist but provide you with a little more additional detail about where our rates currently are in terms of covering the cost of care, which is the top bar here. And the numbers within these bars are the numbers of rates, and how each of the options that we're discussing today would affect the distribution. So you can see that of our current sort of core 36 rates, those shown on the table earlier today, about half of our rates currently cover at least 80% of the cost of care, and about 1/4 of them cover 100% or more. With the recommended 3-rate option, all but 3 of our 36 rates would cover at least 80% of the cost of care, and again, sort of slightly distribution for the 2-rate and the 4-rate option. I think, as the Commissioner already mentioned, it is important to acknowledge that because infant and toddler care is much more expensive than care for preschool and school-age children, we have been particularly focused on that. We also do know that programs typically charge, as I think Selfie educated all of us about, and the field well knows that programs typically charge more than the cost of care for serving preschoolers, so they can really offset some of the very high cost of serving an infant.
And we should say that it's sort of like built into the child care model. Like, no,
Yes.
I would say, one of the things I've really learned over the last year is that, and as you said, our providers know this well already, but it's really built into the assumptions about the way the model works, which is that infant care is so expensive and the ratios create, and the staffing create such a high cost of delivering that care that is a standard practice. So it's really built into the thinking in terms of how we think about where the cost of care should fall for a preschool rate or a school age rate versus an infant rate. So.
Yes, and I think it makes sense to try to aim for rates that do mirror the market and sort of the typical business model. So that might look like, and I think often does, exceeding the cost of care for certain age groups in recognition of rates not covering the cost of care for other age groups.
I just want to re-emphasize what you said about mirroring the market, because we do want to be following sort of what the market is dictating as well as paying attention to the costs. So we know for programs what you can charge for preschool versus what you can charge for infant, and what families can actually afford in those areas versus the cost. So the proposal does track in many ways, not perfectly, but to following the market as well.
We are also proposing increasing what we call our add-on rates for programs that have contracts for additional services to children who are in our DCF system, children of young parents, and children and families experiencing homelessness. As you know, these additional resources really help programs provide additional support services, and so we're proposing increasing sort of the additional rate by $1 this year to $24 per day. And just as a note as well, to fully explain our methodology, that we have applied the same cost of living adjustment and consolidation approach to our family child care system rates as well. So just wanted to point out that detail. So in order to consider the percent increase by region for each of the options presented today, we also found it helpful to keep in mind the percent increase that each region experienced last year and the percent increase planned for this year, to just fully understand the cumulative regional impact over the 2-year period. So this slide just zooms in on just one of our rates, center-based infants, and first shows the percent increase by region last year in the white column. And then the percent increase for this year for each option. So you will see that last year there were larger increases for this rate for the Metro and Metro Boston regions, and this year larger increases for infants for Western, Central, and Southeast. We can also look at the total percent across both years, which is the right column of the shaded set for each option, and I think that this table really helps to illustrate both the substantial increases to rates that we're considering regardless of the option over 2 years. You will see that that ranges from 20 to 48% for infants across all options, and also how the past couple years have helped to boost the rates in regions, particularly this year, which have been historically less resourced. And finally, in the appendix of the deck, we have included detailed slides for all of the options, but just wanted to include details about our recommended option here for the other age groups as well. So the last slide was infants, and this adds preschool and school age that we looked at the last slide. The green column shows the 2-year percent increase for each age group. As we've already mentioned, we see the biggest gap between our current rates and the cost of care for infants, with toddlers following. And here you can see that this year and cumulatively, we're generally proposing, where we have resources available, the biggest adjustments to our infant and toddler rates. So, I think we now want to zoom back out. Again, this is back to the sort of summary of the different options, and really look forward to questions, discussions about some of the trade-offs across the different options and input on how to move forward. So thank you for the time to share all of those details. I hope it was the right level of information and not too much.
Excellent job. Thank you, team, very much. So open it up for.
Yeah, we'll open up for discussion. I just want to extend a thanks. You had quite a task with lots of opportunity built into it to kind of take where we want to head with what we have to live with this year, and also taking into consideration feedback from the board over the last year and a half, as well as folks in the field. And this was fascinating, and just appreciative of seeing the evolution of this work as we move forward. And I appreciate your comment, Amy, throughout the presentation on this is recognizing current costs. I know even the selfie report has, increased compensation and everything. So this is the next step, not the final step, in kind of the journey that we have to go on here. But just wanted to say thank you before we open it up for conversation from the board. Questions, comments?
A question.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's still being impacted by the market rate. And I understand that we don't have an option on that, but is the alternate, the rate methodology for the upcoming new methodology, is it not included in market rate, or are we eliminating that from what we're proposing federally? And what is the timeline again on that? You can remind me.
Good questions. So our intent would be to commit to using a methodology that is based on cost to inform our rate adjustments in the future, and acknowledging that it is also really important to understand the market and market rates to supplement that information. So I think the proposal we put forward, again, really allows us to use costs as a primary focus, but we do understand and intend to continue to look at market rates and bring that information into the discussion as well.
I think it's important to recognize that the market rates do reflect what is parent facing in terms of of what parents have access to in the market. And while highly imperfect, and I think the cost of care is going to get us much greater equity and access, it's important for us to understand what prices families are facing and how our reimbursement rates do or don't facilitate the purchasing power of families in the market in which they're living, working, and trying to buy early education and care. So while I think we're really looking for a future that's much more cost-informed, I think we will continue, it'll continue to be important to look at the market rate. And I just want to say two other things too. One is we have done across the board increases for a long time, and we've been using the market rate survey for a long time. So it's going to take more than 1 year to make this transition to a sort of more equitable, consistently cost-informed. And so moving towards that in this year with the proposals that we've put forward will build a better and stronger foundation for us to go forward in how we implement. The second thing I want to just say, and we've talked about it here a lot, is that rates alone are not going to help us bring the financial health and stability and equity and access for families that we want, or for providers, or for the educators that are working in the field. So while I am so happy we are going to be able to increase the rates the way we are, and of course we're looking forward hopefully to opportunities to do more of that for our programs that are participating in child care financial assistance, Commonwealth Cares for Children, and operational and stabilization grants that are outside the rate structure and that are available for a broader-based set of programs to be able to support staff and quality investments without passing on the cost to parents is going to continue to be an essential lever for our system. The capital grants that we're putting out are also essential, including for our family child care providers, to make sure that we're providing the spaces and places that children can thrive. And many of the other supports around professional development, scholarships for education, and then overall continuing the work around child care financial assistance and hopefully expanding access for families at higher incomes who need to be able to access and pay for care. So such an important piece of the puzzle, but one lever among many that I think we're going to continue to be paying attention to.
Carolyn, and then I'll go to Nikki and more.
I have a few other
Yeah,
comments,
go
but
ahead, go ahead.
sorry.
Yeah.
So obviously, this is a multi-year approach, and it's it has to be said that it's going to take more than 2 years that we're already into it. This consolidation of regions, it's a great idea. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. It took significant funding in consolidating some of these regions. So I know we only have one bucket of funding. So, you know, a lot of the funding went to even out some of those regions. But then I think and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm thinking the next two goals were to obviously meet that market rate or maximize meeting that market rate for all regions and prototypes, but also allow or encourage additional supply of infant toddler availability across regions. I see personally, obviously, I see discrepancies or it's not so much discrepancy, but there's some differences from some regions. Obviously, it stands out the preschool rate for Region 3. Preschool is extremely important, as you had mentioned, for all regions because it is where there is profit generation in order to cover those infant toddler services on the other hand and have a more balanced offering within the market. I wouldn't want any region to be left behind. I mean, I appreciate that we're going to have some time to think about it and for people or for the field to just share their thoughts and ideas or commentary, but I think there might be a little room to look at the infant rate increases in order to allow for some flexibility for the preschool rate and have a little bit more equity across regions. And again, this is a multi-year approach. We're not looking to do everything in 1 year and to meet all the goals in 1 year. So, I mean, I think that's where I see a little bit of room for consideration, I guess I would say at this point. But because unless, I guess, the infant toddler goal, unless it's going to be a drastic increase, that is going to make an impact on the availability of it, and it will make an impact, but not enough where the preschool rate is not needed anymore in order to carry those programs. So, I mean, I'm thinking that maybe we can moderate what we're doing for infant rate a little more in order to carry that preschool a little longer for all regions.
So let me make.
like-
I just want to make sure I understand.
I know,
I think
I
you're
hope I did a good
very
job.
you're and I think we've heard very consistent support, especially for the three
Yeah.
rate consolidation.
Yes.
That makes sense, but that consolidation was expensive.
Yeah.
Because bringing some of the regions, and so it leaves some regions not those who were at the furthest end are seeing the biggest increases, and infant toddler seeing. So I think what I hear you saying is really supportive of the consolidation, worried that we might have pressed too hard on the infant toddler button and not pressed hard enough on the preschool where we had the opportunity to do targeted increases. Is that?
Yes, I mean, I think we could, yes. I think that's a good way to summarize that. Thank you. You're much better with words than me. So-
No, I just want to make sure we understood. So if the team is
Thank you.
directed to go back to do
Yeah,
that
no, I
by the
appreciate
board,
that.
that we are
I think
clear
that
on the
covers it.
task. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Without, while recognizing that infant toddler market was in dire need of
Yes.
attention.
For
Yes,
sure.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Carolyn, and then I'll go to Nikki on the phone. Carolyn.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to the commissioner and her team, and obviously an incredible amount of work went into this. I mean, we just had the discussion last year about the market rate and, that we were, stuck with it because that's what the feds had approved, and unless and until you get approval to do something else, you have to do what the federal government tells you to do, whether you want to or not, so that's where we are, and you guys have already moved that piece forward and sent in a proposal, and now we're waiting for approval, but I do think that this is an incredible amount of work and incredible amount of progress has been made through this process, and I think that it's never going to be perfect. No such thing exists, and we are limited in the means that we have. But I'm also grateful to the administration and the legislature for the additional funding because it's not the most progress you could ever make, but it's unprecedented progress, and that's what I really want to emphasize to this board is that the amount of progress that's been made, and we heard the public testimony is what's going on at EEC. They're really family friendly. They're listening to us, and they're doing the best they can to establish equity, right? And I think that that's really just needs to be acknowledged. So I applaud you guys for all of this work, and I'm very pleased with it. And I think it was very thoughtful and very comprehensive. I mean, I went into law so I could avoid math, and I was able to follow along just fine. So really, just deep appreciation. And I know that when something hasn't been adequately funded for a long period of time, and then you get substantial increases, you still say, but it's not enough. But it's so much better than where we were, and I think that really needs to be acknowledged. In the fact that early education is really being embraced and supported by the administration and Mr. Secretary, and I think it's wonderful because it's getting us there. We just always want to go faster than we possibly can.
Thank you, Carolyn. Nikki.
Thanks so much. I just want to echo everything that Carolyn just said. This is really wonderful and so excited to see these really historic increases. I mean, I think that if we're looking at last year and this year together, it's really an unprecedented kind of situation here, and really looking forward to seeing, hopefully those increases translating to, staff salaries and quality and things like that. I have two comments. One is just going back to the earlier discussion about market rate. I think I just want to echo the commissioner's statements about holding on to the market rate, because it is such an important thing to make sure that our families who have subsidies are able to have purchasing power in the market, and making sure that that those rates, we do continue to pay attention to those rates so we make sure that our families can access the care that they need. My other statement is just around the impacts of these sort of historic increases to the subsidy rates, potential impacts of that on the market, and the fear which I have voiced in these meetings before around if we are increasing our rates by 20, 30, 40%. What is that going to do to the market and to what parents are asked to pay in general? And so it's something that I've asked about before, and I just would like to, raise it again. I would love to better understand the kind of impacts that have already happened since we last increased the rates. Have there been changes to the rates that child care programs across the Commonwealth are charging? And then also, what has been the experience in other places where there's been, large increases like this in the subsidies that are paid? And then finally, thinking about ways that we might be able to use C3 a little bit creatively to encourage programs to lower parent fees, to lower the tuitions that they're charging to parents. Because I really, you're looking at an increase some of these increases are $7,000 a year that we're seeing, which is wonderful in terms of, the money that's going to be flowing to childcare providers. And I want to, affirm my support for covering the cost of care. And I just want to, point out that parents in Massachusetts cannot afford the cost of care. And so if we're moving the market toward that, it's not going to be feasible. And it's going to result in people leaving the workforce, women leaving the workforce. So just wanted to encourage us to sort of keep that in mind and keep lowering, while focusing on the subsidies and the amounts is really important. I also, would love to see us, thinking about ways that we can lower the cost of care across the board for those that don't have subsidies as well.
Thanks, Nikki. Maura?
Just wanted to, first say, co-sign on what Nikki and Carolyn and everyone has said about what an incredible opportunity this is and what tremendous work in such a complex topic. The question I'm grappling with, Amy, at the end, you said like there's trade-offs between 2, 3, and 4. And since our job is to approve your recommendation with 3 rates, I want to make sure I understand like the biggest trade-off of 3 versus 2 and 3 versus 4. And let me say my understanding with 3 versus 4 rates, the trade-off is that it's a lower COLA across the board to do 3 rates against a million things that are great about the 3 rates. Let me actually take a step back. It seems like a no-brainer that the 3 rates make sense compared to the 2. That's why I just want to push and make sure I'm clear on what is that trade-off. So it's COLA is a little lower with 3 versus 4, and then 2 versus 3. Is it the operational challenge of having 3 over 2? I can't figure out I'd love your help understanding the biggest trade-off on the 2 and to confirm that I'm right on the 4, or tell me what I've gotten wrong.
I can start. So I think that Maura, Member Siegel, you are correct that the cost of living increase is one of the sort of major distinguishing characteristics. As I said before, in terms of sort of the cost of consolidation, and the more we consolidate, sort of the less resources that there are available for both across the board increases and targeted increases. I think that furthermore, the 3-rate option that we are recommending does allow us to more significantly raise rates higher in terms of the percent of the cost of care. So I think that, again, we wanted to put forward more than one option just to sort of show our thinking and make sure it was clear what some of the trade-offs were. I think that in terms of, and I think, as has been mentioned, this is a stage in multiple stages of consideration. And so I think depending on sort of the additional cost work and market rate information and data that we're considering, there could also be further consideration of additional consolidation at some point in the future. But because of the expense of going all the way there, and also just seeing the range of cost data and some of the similarities and some of the differences in different parts of the state, again, we wanted to sort of see what it would look like, and we put forward options that we think have a rationale behind them. But again, I think you're right that in balance, the 3-rate option seems to us at least to have the most sort of benefits within the trade-offs.
Yeah, and I'll just add, we wanted to share with you the options we looked at so that you had an opportunity to have insight into the same conversations that we as a team had. So because it was so complicated and there were all these trade-offs, we ran these scenarios so we could understand. And we came to the same conclusion you did, Maura, which is why we're recommending the 3-rate option. It makes the most sense. It balances the most number of things. It gives us opportunity for future consolidation if that makes sense based on data and tracking and impact, and it allowed us to kind of maximize the funding for family childcare at the full 20 million, which you can't see here, but I'll say that. And so in balance, the reason we sort of presented the three was to give you the opportunity to sort of see what the trade-offs look like on paper, but coming forward strongly with the recommendation around the three rate option for the same reasons. I think that you concluded it makes the most sense.
More, Nikki, any follow?
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I actually appreciate it that you gave us the three scenarios, because it's not like you just came up with something, you're presenting it, and you want approval for it. You're giving us the whole analysis and, you know, to me, it's pretty obvious that the three rates is, you know, the best of the options. But also very much appreciate the fact that you looked at the other two. You know?
What makes it clearer that it is when you can see it
Right.
next to the others.
Right.
The cost of living piece, it's terrific too. Like that whole idea of making sure that everybody gets at least the cost of living. It's unprecedented, and it's just I appreciate that very much.
Again, thank you. And my hope is that, you know, the way that we had this conversation today, and you all are the experts in this, and we appreciate all the information that you shared with us. But, you know, as feedback comes in through public testimony and the board, like, you know, if there are changes or things that you want to do between now and January, please let us know. Like, again, in service of improvement and making it better, like just factoring in anything the public may have as it relates to ideas or thoughts on this. It sounds like the three rates is the right model, and so I appreciate that. And I just want to amplify your comment as well, in that it seems at some point we did 6 regions and it just stuck forever. Like we you know, the idea of continuously evaluating the demographics and the profiles of different parts of the state so that we can align in a really effective way, like that just to me just shows the thoughtfulness in which you guys are bringing to this work, that it's not just now we're stuck with 3 regions for the next 20 years. Like, it's like, no, we're going to continue to evaluate how to do this work in a really thoughtful way. And based on what you presented to us, and I agree with Carolyn, like to see the other scenarios, like you can see the thoughtfulness that went in this. And echoing all the comments, it's not perfect, right? Like, but it does feel like a next step that, to Carolyn's point, like the fact that we're here from where we were just shows how focused you all have been on this on behalf of children and families, most importantly. And so just grateful for your leadership and talent that you've brought to this.
Absolutely. And so just in terms of next steps, we will double down on that 3 rate option, take some look at some of the feedback we've received today, if there's any adjustments that could reasonably be made, as well as public comment and the public comment that we received in writing. I suspect we'll continue to receive input and feedback from our stakeholders, and very much invite that, please. We will hope for a vote at the January board meeting so that we can get the rate increases out on the street. Probably important for the board to just be reminded that they are retroactive to July 1, because this is an FY24 budget. So even though we may be getting them out a little later than we may have hoped, they will be retroactive for all providers, which will be good. And then, you know, there's much more work to be done here. And so we listed out some of the areas that we know in terms of school age rates and infant rates, and we're taking a really hard look at our family friend and neighbor care and how to support that part of our sector most effectively. And then obviously opportunities for further restructuring and consolidation. So that won't be next month, but that will hopefully be opportunities for future. So I want to thank the board for your thoughtful feedback and support for the team and their work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think at this time we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll come back here at 2:45. Agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We, as you know, we have been in a multi-year reform of our child care financial assistance system, leaving no stone unturned, whether it's our child care financial assistance regulations and policies that are family-facing and also provider-facing. And you heard a little bit about that today. We've been talking about it with all of you over the last year and a half, or the child care financial assistance rates. Another big important piece of our child care financial assistance is the way that families access early education and care financial aid. So they can do it through a voucher, or they might do it through a contracted slot, and that is dedicated slots that we purchase at a specific provider, typically by age group. And it can be type of care, so through family child care. So we have contracts right now for our income eligible child care, which means we buy from programs based on the eligibility of a family meeting income eligible, and they're able to enroll in a program if that program has a contract for that type of care that they're looking for. We also have contracts that support what we call priority populations. Those are families that are involved with the Department of Children and Families, families experiencing homelessness, as well as our young parents, or what has previously been called teen parents. And so these contracts provide a really important stable financing for our early education and care system and providers. They also secure capacity, sometimes in critical areas or critical age groups. These contracts have not been reprocured since 2009 and 2010, respectively. So we are now in the process of the reprocurement of these contracts. And we've been at this over the last year and a half. So we've been doing a number of stakeholder engagement sessions, visioning sessions, and all the information that we've collected that led to our child care financial assistance reforms for policies and procedures, the reprocurement and new contracts with our child care resource and referral agencies. We've been accumulating ideas, thoughts, and understandings about the way child care financial assistance works both for our families as well as for our providers. And now we're deep into I should say we're not quite deep into it, but we are in the development process. So we've had a lot of opportunity to gain feedback and information. And just today, we released another opportunity for sort of formal input into this procurement process. So we posted today on Combise, which is not a very user-friendly system, so I'll apologize in advance. For those who are very familiar with Combise, it may well be a very user-friendly system, but we are reaching into new populations that might not have used the formal public system, but it is what we are required to do. So we posted a request for information. The link is actually in the slide deck that's posted on this slide, number 28, for those who want to take a look at it. We are, and I'm just going to apologize for the timing of this. We are in a very tight timeline in order to try and get what we hope are new contracts by July 1st. Backing into that, we've been committed to seeking information about some of the areas that we're most interested in thinking about changing, areas that we've received feedback that need attention as we think about this significant procurement of our services. So we posted the request for information today. I just want to tell folks, please do not feel obligated to respond if you've already provided feedback. Also, please do not feel obligated to respond to every question in it. We're very curious, so it has a lot of sections and a lot of questions in it. And the information we get back from that RFI will help inform the development of the request for responses, which we intend to post in mid-February, with responses due back in late March, and again, hoping with a target date of July 1 for new contracts. So I thought I would just spend a couple minutes using the RFI as an opportunity to talk about some of the areas that we're focused on. One is maximizing utilization. So you can imagine that the contracts not having been reprocured since 2009 and 2010, there's been a lot of changes in demographics and changes in need for families. So we have experienced significant underutilization in those contracts. And so we're interested in understanding from folks in the field how to maximize that utilization. Related to that is probably a need to increase flexibility so that we make sure that programs are able to respond to the emerging needs of families or emerging needs within their communities. We also have our contracted providers right now conducting eligibility determinations and managing enrollment from the centralized waiting list, and we're interested in how that's working out for them and whether there's some ways that we might be able to improve that, both from the family perspective as well as from the provider perspective. Purchasing a whole classroom or number of spots in a program also raises the question about what kind of quality standards we might be able to expect, and how we might build in continuous quality improvement into programs. We are laser focused on infant toddler care, so not only does the rate proposal contemplate how we might incentivize greater infant toddler care or people going back into the infant toddler care business, but the contract procurement mechanism might also be a really good way for us to try and procure infant and toddler or incentivize programs to go back into the infant toddler business. We want to make sure that we're paying attention to family engagement and support, both for all families, but also for our priority populations. So right now, as you saw in the rate presentation for our priority populations, we do a daily add-on rate, which is provided in order to support additional support services, whether it's transportation or mental behavioral health, sometimes speech therapy. And we're interested in understanding whether that per child add-on rate is the best way for us to buy support services, or are there other ways we might structure that differently, including transportation as sort of a separate service. We're really interested in the role of family child care systems. For those who aren't aware, they are networks that work with a number of family child care providers, and Maria can probably describe this better than I can as she runs the system, but they provide a number of support services for family child care providers that are part of their network, whether it's eligibility, determination, and enrollment, marketing, shared services, professional development, mentoring, home visiting, and our family child care systems provide an essential function within the system, but they are also quite varied. And so we're interested in gathering some information about what we might do and purchase that could bring a level of consistency and standards across our systems. And finally, not to leave ourselves out of it, we wanted to hear from folks about what kind of training and technical assistance EEC could provide that would be most helpful to our providers. So that is a very fast overview of some of the things that the agency's considering and looking at and researching and have heard from our stakeholders are things we should be thinking about in this re-procurement process. So we are looking forward to the formal feedback that we received through the RFI, and I'll apologize again for the timeline being right here through the holidays, but we want to make sure that we can get that RFR out on the street in the target timeline that we've laid out, so that we can have those new contracts in place, and also make sure that we're giving providers enough time to respond. Especially, it's been a long time for them as well.
Can I just ask a question?
Of course.
Like, just best practice as it relates to, I know you mentioned it's been a while. Like, what would be the regular cadence of kind of going out to contract for these in a perfect world?
So typically, I mean, so for our child care resource and referral agency contracts, for example, we did a 3-year contract with 2 2-year options to renew.
Got it.
So it would be more typical to, and we, both of these contracts are out of compliance with state procurement rules. So we are under careful watch from the Operational Services Division to make sure that we meet our obligations to re-procure these contracts. So the timeline is both ours and obligated, as they are way past.
Thank you. So it would mirror that kind of, like the RFI.
I think it would mirror something like that.
Yeah,
And, you know, like the child care resource and referral agency contracts, you know, we are a system in transition, and we design that RFR as a bridge to the future state where we have, you know, greater technology, family-facing, but also provider-facing, that we continue to modernize our system, make it easier to do business, use technology for all aspects, not losing the family touch, and making sure families who want to be in contact can. So this will definitely be designed in that same way, which is, you know, we have the system we have today, and we want to maximize and make it better for kids and families and for the providers who are providing these services. But we also want to kind of continue to transform to the future state, and so the contract will contemplate that as well.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
No? Okay.
Great.
I am not going to do this in detail, but we provided, I mean, I'll just say.
You're doing a lot.
I know.
I'll give you the,
I'm just going to say, it's been busy.
Yeah.
Secretary, it's been a banner year for early education.
Banner year.
It's been a banner year for
Right.
early education care. So there's been, there has been a tremendous amount of work that has happened over the past year, and I feel incredibly fortunate to have had the opportunity to oversee this team and to recruit new talent, some of which you met today, some of whom you met today, to the agency. And we have stayed on course in sort of some of the key areas that we've been focused on. So agency capacity first and foremost, and you can see the results of the talent that we've been recruiting in, and I imagine you will continue to do that. We've continued our work to modernize the background record check system with a big milestone this past year to basically move all of our residential and placement programs into that new system and retire our legacy system, which is a great and the first step in sort of the workforce system. We've been reimagining childcare financial assistance from every single angle and talking to you about that. I have had the great fortune of visiting 32 programs over the past year, and family childcare, center-based programs, public school programs, all the way from Pittsfield to Martha's Vineyard, and just grateful for the opportunity to have been in so many programs, sometimes in people's homes. I always learn something from the programs and take away something really important for what we need to be doing to think about our own continuous quality improvement. So grateful for all of that. Obviously, we have also continued our two-track kind of work around the workforce, and which is looking at the horizon and thinking about credentialing and career pathways in the long term, but also trying to address some of the immediate needs that we have in the field around pipeline and recruiting folks to come into and stay in the field. And obviously, 3 sets of large-scale regulatory reforms. So we completed the child care financial assistance ones, although implementation will be ongoing. We launched our regulatory reform for our residential programs and also for the child care licensing. So you will be hearing about those as well. So I will, unless there's questions, I'm not go into detail, but those are available for you to read at your pleasure. And I'll just say it was the team who put those together, so you can see a lot of effort and pride by the team and the amount and volume of work that's happening and the quality. Looking ahead, here's what you have to look forward to in the coming year. We will continue our discussions around the Commonwealth Cares for Children program and how that continues to transition from a kind of pandemic era program to what we hope is a sustainable operational support for programs and what we need to do to make that program as strong as possible. We will continue our work around child care financial assistance, whether it's policy reforms or rates, as you'll be voting on that in January. The child care licensing regulations. We will be coming back to you with recommendations about new credentialing for educators in the coming year. Getting back to Chapter 2 on promoting high quality programs and continuous quality improvement and what that looks like. Interest on this board and high priority for the administration around making sure that we're focused on early literacy and thinking about how we're maximizing both the early years and time spent in early education programs around making sure we're addressing the early literacy needs of kids. And then we're really looking forward to come and talking with you at our community preschool partnership initiative, which is really our pre-K partnership program working across many districts right now to increase access and affordability for high quality preschool. And Secretary and I were just in Salem visiting our CPPI programs there. So look forward to sharing that work with you in the coming year as well.
Great. Carolyn. Oh, sorry.
No, I just wanted to acknowledge the incredible amount of training that's going on for the field and thank your team for that. A lot of the staff in the field is attending them, and again, you're doing it in person, you're doing it online, repeating it again for those that were not able to attend. And I think this is the most feedback I've heard with regards to the new financial assistance policy changes and how helpful they are. I mean, I think explaining them in person and just hearing them from directly from the department, it just hits differently. And we're just looking forward to, implementing 100% of them. So thank you that's a huge amount of effort. So I don't know if you mentioned that, but I wanted to acknowledge that and thank you for that.
I should have, because it was not, as you are aware, we do not have a training team. So, but we knew how essential it was that we have an opportunity to directly talk with our family access administrators about both the philosophical change and the technical changes that are included in those reforms. And it's been wonderful for us too, but a heavy lift for the team working on it. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Carolyn.
Really, my only comment is congratulations in that, you have this, I don't think the 2 slides does it justice in terms of the end of year review, because there's so much
11-point font.
substantial amount of work that's been occurring at EEC. And I just, congratulations, Mr. Secretary, Commissioner, and to the entire team here at EEC. I would just like to acknowledge that the board made its best decision when it changed you from interim commissioner to commissioner in this year. So that's part of the.
Thank you. And we're grateful for the support of this board, which amplifies and leverages the work.
I want to echo that. As the new person on the board, it's been amazing for me to see the focus and the accomplishment over, I think, the past 9 months I've been on the board. It's just been wonderful to see, and I agree, congratulations, and I'm very happy to be part of this group.
Great. Anything on the phone, Nikki, more? Well, thank you, Commissioner, for sharing this. The team has worked so hard that they're awfully humble, I think, but I do think it's so important to just reflect back on what we're doing, and really, more, Maria, it makes me think of your comment, like, there is a lot of change happening, right? And we've got to bring not only the team together and government together and providers together and families along that journey. Like, that's really difficult work, and the progress that has just been made under your leadership has just been really incredible, and so grateful to the entire team. And I really do believe this, like this, especially in this sector, it is a partnership, and the folks in the field and adding their voice and participating in the trainings and giving us input, like that is all in service of doing this work better on behalf of children and families. And so it's working right now, and just appreciative to everybody who's got their hand in this, because we still have more work to do. And I think we learned that with the rate discussion. A big step we're making, but it's not the final step. We have a lot more to do, and we need to keep at it. And so just grateful for the partnership across the Commonwealth for people's commitment to this. And with that, I will motion to adjourn. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, see you in January.